Testing.
Yep, there it is. Yep. Hi, Spencer. He said he can only hear Paul, but now he can hear us. All right,
Yep.
cool.
All right.
All
I
right.
have so many buttons here, I always miss one.
I guess he just wanted to mute what I said.
Yeah, probably. Let's try it again. Hey, everybody, welcome to Tanzu Tuesday. Besides just Paul, it's there's other people with us. This is great. We're very excited for this episode. We have with us the Vanguards, Tanzu Vanguards, which is a group that was brought over from Pivotal. And they are people that I'll let them explain even further, but basically they are customers who advocate on behalf of our products because they are using them and they want to talk about them. And we walked Paul. All right, well, that was the show. Thanks, Paul. Oh wait, he's back now. All right.
Shoot, we had a brief period to talk about him.
We did, and then he left. He's back now. All right. So why don't we go around and introduce? We've got with us Jonathan. I'm going to mispronounce your last name, Jonathan.
Regier.
Juergen Sussner. Is that close?
Yes.
I got the B as the double S. That's one thing I know in the German. And then Carrie Schaefer.
Yes.
So, welcome. Thank you so much for joining with us.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Who did we say was going to give us the definition of the Vanguard? Was that you, Jonathan?
I'll do it. I don't know if
great.
we officially pointed a finger, but I'm happy to do it. So
okay,
yeah, the Vanguards are essentially a super user community of Pivotal / VMware customers, and we perform a couple of different functions kind of within each other and to the world at large, I guess. Number one, we advocate for what we as customers feel that we need from VMware. So we get to see a lot of products really early in development, and they ask us questions like, "Hey, would you use this? Are we pricing it right?" Things like that. So that's one of the big benefits. The big benefits to us, obviously, we get to see those products, and we have direct access to experts. So quite often, if I have an issue, I can get to the person that developed the software inside of VMware when I need to do something. And then the third benefit that I think is really huge is I can ask people that do what I do in places where I am never going to be able to go. So whether it's, we've got Juergen from Germany on the phone, we have Carrie, who's in a totally different part of the state or of the US, doing a totally different job. I can go, hey, I want to do this, and this is kind of how I want to approach it. And am I crazy? And I'm going to get an answer. Yes, you're crazy. No, this is how we want to do this, or try it this way. Without the Vanguards, getting that kind of peer input from other people who have probably had the same problems that you have at some point in the past is really, really difficult to do. So again, real quick, we advocate for vendor or for customers to VMware. We get to see what's coming down the pike, and it helps us to plan and vision inside our companies, and we get to talk to each other. So we get to not only hear from VMware saying this is what we think you should do, but we get to hear from customers saying, yeah, we tried that and it worked, or we tried that and it mostly worked. So really, it's been a huge benefit for my company.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And are you allowed to say which companies you all represent, or I don't know? This is an anonymous situation.
I mean, it's probably pretty easy to find. I work for a large electronics manufacturer in the Midwest. We make avionics and outdoor products and fitness products. So we'll go with that.
Okay, great, perfect.
Yep.
And I work at I work at One Magnify. We are a small to medium-sized business out of the headquartered in the Detroit area. We've actually got offices we have 6 offices, and including 3 international. So we do a lot of, so we do marketing, technology, and analytics work. And you may not have ever heard of us, but you'll know all of our customers because we, all of them are household names.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
How about you, Juergen?
To add, I'm pretty sure you have never heard about DATEV, because DATEV is a German company for tax consultants, auditors, and lawyers, and we do all the IT processing and all the IT infrastructure work for German tax consultants. And in this case, I always want to say, if you take all the tax laws in the world, put them in a big bucket, and pour out of one of this, it's a chance of 1 to 10 that you hit a German tax law. So German tax laws are quite complicated, and therefore we all do all the IT and all the infrastructure providing and software developing for German tax consultants.
It's great.
Cool. And I work for VMware. Oh wait, you didn't care about that.
Yeah.
I was hoping
I think that it goes back to just, you work for these other companies, but software, as they say, is eating the world, and so you're now, software companies as well. So it's really great that you're able to kind of create this community to support each other. I mean, that's, I think, what I've really appreciated coming from Pivotal to VMware, and something that it's talked about a lot. It's clearly harder to do in practice, but just the idea of let's just make it better for everybody. We might not necessarily do the exact same things, but they're going to apply somehow, some way. So if we can build that community and support each other, yes, we're in competition with business. I get that. I understand there's bottom lines and stakeholders and all that stuff. But as a people, as a planet, let's just do software better and make it better for all of us to live happier lives. So this is great. Thank you all so much for joining us. Before we get into our really nitty-gritty, meaty questions that we have for you, I'm going to do a couple announcements just to get them out of the way, and then we'll jump back into it. So next week's a big week. Europe has CF Summit happening. CF Summit is Cloud Foundry Summit, if people watching don't know, but anyway, it's a really great opportunity for the open source community for Cloud Foundry to get together and talk about what's happening. That is the 20th, 21st, if I'm not mistaken. Go to cloudfoundry.org/events. And yes, virtual, there it is. October 21st, 22nd, excuse me. All online. It is Europe time. So this is great for Juergen. But if you're in the US based or otherwise, it might be harder on the hours. I know they do a US and then a European version of this throughout the year. So this is coming up October 21st, 22nd. But I know there's some really exciting announcements. So even if you might not see it live, definitely keep your ears and eyes peeled to the Twitter sphere and whatnot for some really great announcements coming up. And next week, we also have same dates, October 21st, 22nd. Spring Boot, the omakase with our chef, Mark Heckler. He's going to be talking on the 21st and giving us his spring boot revolutionizing the Java space conversation. And then we're going to bring in the next day Greg Turnquist, Violetta Georgieva, and Dr. David Sire with Mark Heckler. And we're going to be doing a fireside chat with those 4 amazing Spring minds. So that's again next week. You do have to register. Go to springonetour.io and register for that. It's free. It is online, and it starts at 9 a.m. Pacific time both days. So those are the 2 that I have. Anybody else have anything?
Tanzu Tuesdays next week.
Sure, we have a show next week. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Spring Boot Loves Kubernetes with Stefan Nicol and Brian Clazel.
Those guys are amazing. They did something similar for the Spring 1 virtual show that we had September 2nd and 3rd, and they're back. They're going to be talking about Spring and Kubernetes. It's incredible. We're very happy to have them. So that'll be a fun show. And then as always, go to tanzu.tv. All of the different shows and programs are listed and happening pretty much on a weekly, daily basis throughout the week, Monday through Friday. So we're excited for that. And we have a new show that we're going to be, just like TGIK on Fridays, we're going to be kind of, what's that called? Not ghosting, but it's not our show, but we're going to be showing it on the tanzu.tv. What's that called, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, so TGIK is on the Tanzu TV website. It is streamed to YouTube, not Twitch. But you can.
But I'm saying, what's that term called where we're like, it's not our show, but we show it on our channel?
Syndicating?
Yeah, syndicated. Maybe.
Okay, yeah. So we've syndicated. They're not getting paid, but anyway. So
right.
Yeah, we're
and then also
anyway,
tomorrow is Mario Gray on Code.
Code, that's right.
And he's going to be talking about test containers. They're your friend, and why you should use them. Cool. And that's tomorrow at 12 Pacific time.
Pacific, yes, specific time. All right, I think we got rid of all the announcements. Thank you all for sticking with us through that. Have to pay the bills, as they say. So yeah, let's go, and we can start with Carrie. Did you help start the Vanguard partnership? You personally, was it like kind of what is your story history with getting into the Vanguard? I guess is the best way to think.
So I think all three of us, so I'm sure they'll all have their stories. So we've known each other for a while, because I was one of the early Vanguards, and there weren't nearly as many of us last year. My sales team through VMware, actually at that time was Pivotal, reached out and said, you have some pretty strong opinions about how the software should work, and kind of a nice way of saying you're a pain in the what. But they said, you have strong opinions about this. You have, we want to introduce you to more people within the organization. Once they started doing that, they found out that the Vanguard program was starting at that point, and they recommended that I join it. So I have been there since, I don't know the exact beginning, but pretty early on I joined, and then it's been a great experience.
It's a couple years, I think. I remember when it was being shopped around and Brian Chang leading it. So cool. That's great. So you're an OG Vanguard.
Yeah.
How about you, Juergen?
Regarding to me, it's basically a similar story. I did a lot of events like the CF Summit and presentations at the CF Summit, talking about what we did with Cloud Foundry, with Pivotal Cloud Foundry. And I get to know Domain Druids and talk to her a lot on an evening event. We talked about our vision, or my vision, what I think Cloud Foundry is used for, about the term developer efficiency. And when the Vanguard started, I got a call on, hey, do you want to participate in that community? We're creating that community. It would be nice to have you on board. And that was the way I got to know the Vanguards, and I was one of the founding members of the Vanguards. And I think this community helped me a lot over the years to build my own way in dealing with Cloud Foundry and dealing with all these issues. And there's a lot of fun in this community.
It's great. That's really great. Yeah, Dormain, big fan. We're all big fans, and she's actually my neighbor. She just lives a mile down the road, so I get to, and our kids go to school together, so it's a lot of cool.
Yeah, cool.
All right, and I guess we'll have to hear from you, Jonathan. No, okay. Jonathan, we'd love to hear your story as
well. Similar story. I think I've been at Vanguard since I think maybe July of 2019 or so. So not quite as OG as Juergen and Carrie, but I think I'm still considered one of the founding members, because I think it kicked off officially a little before Spring One platform in 2019. Yeah, kind of similar. I've spoken at a few Cloud Foundry summits before then, and so I think my name was out there a little bit as somebody who had opinions on the platform similar to Juergen and Carrie, and Brian reached out to me and said, hey, we'd like to have you on the Vanguards. He actually reached out a lot earlier than that, and was kind of a busy time at Garmin, and I wasn't able to answer right away, but he was persistent, and I'm really glad he was, because as Juergen and Carrie have said, it's a really fantastic community to be a part of, and we've had a lot of fun. So
you've all been Vanguards longer than I've been at VMware.
That's right. It's true. And you're wearing you showed us your shirt earlier.
Oh yeah, I'm rocking it old school today.
Yeah, he's rocking old school.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, nice. Cool. Well, excellent. And this is again, this is kind of our first time, talking with you all, and so we're very grateful for your time. Thank you so much for being here. Now, were all of you of the 51? Oh, nice. Were the three of you counted as the 151,000 that attended VMworld?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that number just blows my mind, because we were talking about it a little bit beforehand. I think for AWS reInvent was 65,000 is kind of what they've said was the max.
In person.
And so in person, I know like Salesforce, the Dreamforce one might be 100K. But just so these numbers are unbelievable. And the fact that you couldn't fit that many people in a room, or a building. And so the fact that 151,000 people can be watching like the same keynote at the same time, and obviously going out into all the different breakout sessions is incredible. So that's great. What I guess let's start before VMworld. Was there anything Did any of you present at VMworld besides Tiffany and Paul? I already know that answer.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, very nice.
Tell us the
Sorry,
deets.
Juergen, I didn't mean to throw you under the bus there.
No problem.
So Carrie, what was your presentation on?
Actually, we were on the same panel. So we were on a panel about deconstructing the monoliths. So.
Oh, great. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know
that's
that's a very popular conversation, particularly for, a lot of these old school companies that are trying to figure out how to stay in valid in our DevOpsian world.
Mhm.
Well, great. And so I know that it wasn't the best one because Paul had the very best talk. Apparently that went out in some Twitter world, that Paul Charkovsky's presentation was the best thing that happened at VMworld. So sorry to disappoint you on that.
All good.
But yeah, so what was your build up to VMworld in terms of what you were looking forward to seeing and kind of being a part of?
I can go first.
Sure.
So there's been kind of a lot of churn in some of the technology that underlies some of the VMware technology. That's a lot of technology in one sentence. Sorry.
A lot of technology.
I'm trying to keep it high level because otherwise, like, the jargon gets four levels deep, and you're like, "Whoa, what was that?" Anyway, so
Thank you.
Bosch. We'll just say Bosch, and everyone will kind of know
Great.
that. Yeah. So some of the things that were changing, there were sort of rumor and innuendo, like, hey, this is going to happen, and you're going to have to do these things, and I was really excited to hear those rumors get dispelled and to hear kind of the long term, like, okay, this is the long term vision, this is where we're going. Some of these other things, yes, they're legacy, but they're still going to be around. I was looking forward to a lot of that, and then also just to hear, Tanzu has been kind of this name for a while that there were lots of ideas of what it was going to do and how it was going to work, and so to hear what was a part of Tanzu and what it was going to do for the industry, I think was those were my big desires from the show.
Yeah, because last year, obviously, Pat Gelsinger on stage talked about Tanzu, talked about Project Pacific. There was the introduction of all these projects, and we know that's kind of how it happens at these conventions. Is you're like, these are our big projects, and we're letting it out there. And it might not be GA right now, it might not be GA in 6 months, but this is where we're going. And so clearly, even Pivotal hadn't been acquired at that point. It was all in the works, but nothing was official until the end of the year. So yeah, this was like the first year. It's like, all right, we now have Bitnami and Pivotal and Carbon Black and Heptio and kind of all the new map BU is going forward with Tanzu, and what does that mean? So yeah, it was a big year to kind of clarify where we are now, which is great. So nice. How about you, Juergen?
Yeah, and not just where we are now and where this will lead to, and what are all the new ideas and things that will happen in the next couple of years. Like if you say as Jonathan said, the changing of the underlying infrastructure, like maybe you will not have this one big foundation, you will have more customer tailored foundations. Like all this is putting on this application abstraction layer, like if it's all running on Kubernetes, you can do very different deployment models. And that's what I found a bit fascinating about where this will lead to and what this will enable us to do. Like we can do very different things, like using the service mesh, for example, to build really different applications, which are different from what we have today. And that's what I was looking for. Besides, that was what Jonathan already said, the thing, in the beginning of the year, Tanzu was a name, and everyone anticipated what this name would look like, what it will be like. Will it be the Pivotal acquisition? Will the spirit of Pivotal be preserved, or will it be somehow absorbed by the VMware company? And all these fears were there, and that's what I always was looking for, like to get a feeling of what MapBU is, what Tanzu is, and what Tanzu is as a whole, and where this will lead to.
Yeah, can I piggyback on that for a second?
Please, yes.
That's something I forgot to mention, but when Pivotal was acquired by VMware, that was kind of one of those moments too, where like Juergen said, like I was like, oh, this could be really awesome, or it could be really bad, because you've got a company that is very, very forward thinking in Pivotal, and you have a company that I think knows they need some reinvention in VMware. And so you have like this really big fish eating a little fish and hoping, I think, that the little fish is going to permeate the culture. Sorry, now the metaphor breaks, but permeate the big fish outward. And
Sure.
So that's, I think, one of the things for me that I was really wanting to see is does Pivotal become a part of VMware and they look like VMware now, or does VMware did they buy a culture and they decide, okay, this is where we want to go, this is what we want to look to, so we're going to maybe put it up on a pedestal a little bit, but we want everyone to look at this culture and go, let's bring this back. That's what I was really hoping to hear some of that.
Well, and I think a little bit to answer that. The reason why they brought Pivotal and Heptio and a couple and Bitnami is to get more credibility in that developer world, right? Obviously, they have the infrastructure; they're in 99% of the market, and so yes, I mean, as a former Pivotal employee that's now VMware, they kept a lot of the core pieces, I feel, in place so that culture could still be created in the map BU. And clearly there's the learning curve and just everybody getting on their feet and kind of saying, this is, where are we? But yeah, it's nice to be a part of, a company that listened, I guess, VMware listened to a lot of what Pivotal had to say, which was great. And so, and again, them retaining a lot of the people as best as they could helped with that, I think, as well.
And on
Carrie,
the topic
do you have any thoughts? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. No, Paul, go ahead.
I was going to say on the topic of conferences, we also recently had Spring One. So if you all attended Spring One and want to have any insights as to what you saw there, and maybe what you thought of the difference between the shows, or whatever, would also be interested in hearing about that.
So I guess it was interesting to me because I actually attended sessions in both. And the first thing I have to say is it was really nice for my organization and the team that I work with that both conferences were virtual, because you can't necessarily grab all your developers and take them out to a conference. I mean, it's just not reasonable. No client's going to accept that. But the fact that they could go and watch the things that they wanted to see in both, and the registration was free, was actually, I think, very beneficial to our developers and even some of our infrastructure folks. So that was amazing for me as well. So I thought that was a really good part of both of those conferences. For VMworld, the interesting thing was I had a lot of interest actually in both, I would say, but in VMworld, I wanted to learn more about vSphere 7, and then there were a lot of new security products that were released. And so, as the world becomes more digital, security becomes more of a concern. So some of those products were really cool, and I thought that could be a nice addition to our suite as we move forward. We're definitely looking at this year implementing like a Kubernetes environment, and so we're leaning towards vSphere 7. So I wanted to see that, and I got a little bit of that in both conferences, but you did see more of that in VMworld than Spring One.
Sure.
Yeah, but Spring One, it's what's funny is there were so many great parts of Spring One. I felt like Spring One, I immersed myself in pretty much the whole 3 days as much as I could. And the thing I really enjoyed with Spring One, which I know this is very cheesy, is I really liked the social track. I thought that was a lot of fun. And so like when your brain is like tired because you've just taken in like 4 hours of information, you switch over there and you're doing like dancing or yoga or something. It just kind of like really refreshing. So I had to say like that was something pretty cool. And then it's having the ability to do both of those conferences, and I don't know that I traditionally would have done both conferences. I probably would have because I spoke at both. But to be able to have my not just myself but my teams be able to go to both, I think that was important. I think you reached a larger audience with especially in a year where you had pretty big important news that you needed to share.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Spring One, again, we had 4,000 people in Austin in 2019, and then we had 41,000 register for 2020. So yeah, the virtualization of these conferences has been nothing but beneficial in terms of numbers and being able to, and like you said, like a lot of times budgets like you can only go to one or the other, or you have 2 conferences throughout the year, so you've got to figure out which one you can go to, and not everybody on the team is going to go to the same one, blah blah blah. So yeah, all of that is absolutely worth it and incredible. And I mean, clearly we know being in person has also got that special feel to it, and I hope that we don't lose that. But I think a merging of like kind of being able to watch it virtually as well as attend, I think is a good way that we can go forward and we can learn from what we've had to do this year. So
yeah, I really look forward to that, like that hybridization of the two. I think that's going to be pretty exciting, because it means cool. I can show up to the conference, or I can just watch it in the hotel lounge next to the conference.
Yeah, because usually it's only the keynote that people can see live from their computer. So being able to see everything would be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the fact that it was a lot easier to switch tracks virtually. So sometimes, myself included, I've spoken at conferences as well, and I think sometimes we don't always get our titles or our abstracts right. And so there's been a few times where I walk into a session and I'm like, 2 minutes in, I'm like, oh, this is not the one I need.
I've made a terrible mistake. Yeah.
right. But then you're like, and then the social anxiety hits, like, oh, can I leave? Will I insult the presenter? Will everyone else see me? So you end up, I gotta wait an hour, right? Or 30 minutes or whatever. And being able to virtual, it takes that pressure completely away. So you can, if you need to jump, you can jump. And I really love that. That was the only.
Have to run. Then didn't have to run and then end up at be like, oh, I have 5 minutes, get there, and there's already lines that you don't get in.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, and just the physical space too, like to be able to go from track to track in 1 second rather than this one's in B129 and that one's in C2, so you're like way up here and way down there. So
yeah, and especially if you're like a re-event or something like that, where it's literally five resorts all down the strip and you got to take a bus and it's an hour just on the bus. So yeah, I mean, all of those things are real and are pain points. And so it's nice that you can alleviate those through this virtualization of it. And, yeah. I mean, obviously, as an events person and somebody that kind of, we're advocates. That's our job, is to go to events and talk in front of people live. It's definitely changed the game. But Paul, how many miles did you fly last year?
Last year I did 300,000. I spent more than a month inside of an airplane.
That's just in the airplane. That's not going to and from the airport and transit and obviously the days away. So yeah, it definitely has alleviated some of those travel pains as well.
I've done 12,000 this year, so it's quite the change.
Right, it's quite the difference.
Wow.
Yeah, and most of that was your vacation that you took yourself. So, but so yes. So anyway, so back to Juergen. You brought up that there were definitely some topics that that you're talking about, the security mesh and other things. What if you could maybe dive deeper, all of you, on kind of some specifics with what you're currently using and you're looking forward to? I mean, I know, Carrie, you also mentioned vSphere 7, but anything else that was announced at VMworld that really caught your attention that you're like, oh, we're definitely going to implement this with our teams?
Maybe I will start. If you go back 4 years when we started with Cloud Foundry, there was the thing called Kubernetes around, but it wasn't the right tool for developer efficiency. And since we wanted a platform for developers to be as efficient as possible and to only focus on developing an application and don't want to build a container, so they should just develop their application and run their application. So Cloud Foundry was the product of choice. And Cloud Foundry offered us all we need to create an environment where developers can be productive. But if I have to do the decision today, and if I see all the things that come along with Kubernetes and all the developer efficiency features, like a build service, for example, like you can deploy a Cloud Foundry control plane on a Kubernetes cluster, I probably would change the implementation we have. We have several big foundations which run multiple thousands AIs, but maybe this is not the right thing I would do if I want to do it again. Maybe it's more like giving development teams their own foundation, which is tailored to their needs. You have teams that have high CPU workloads. You have teams that has high data I/O workloads, for example. And at the moment, we have these big one-size-fits-all foundation, and it doesn't fit everything like it's needed. It fits everything at just a little, or not that good as it is possibly. And we have workloads where we have to do, I wouldn't call it strange things, but we have to do things to get that workload on the foundation. Like we have special isolation segments for specific types of workloads. And today I want to give a Kubernetes cluster and tell them, okay, you can use it as a Kubernetes cluster, or you can use it as a Cloud Foundry foundation with its control plane. You have that team isolation, and that's what a topic which I think has a lot of potential in the way we deliver Cloud Foundry as a service to our customers, to my developers, for example.
I totally agree with you, Juergen. That is something that I think is going to be really exciting. We have exactly the same problem. We have big foundations, but moreover, we have big deployment networks inside those foundations. So if I have to give access to a crown jewel database to one of the applications that runs inside of my inside of that giant deployment network, everybody who uses that same network also gets access to that database at the same time. They might only get network access, but if they somehow get a hold of credentials for it, well, I'm in trouble. And so your idea that we build little clusters and hand them out, but still get to give people the CF push experience, to me is very exciting.
Yeah, and I'll like to that, because I think that line of discussion is extremely interesting to me. I would say that the fact that now, especially with Kubernetes at the base, we could start doing things like hosting data services and potentially even moving some of our old monoliths. I think that's gonna make a world of difference for us. If we, like Juergen kind of said, if we could go back and do it again, like we started moving all of the front ends of our apps to TAS, so that we've been doing that and we're doing a great job at that. But the data services are still sitting in these legacy databases, and we've been looking at PostgreSQL and a couple other things, but there's no real platform for them if you're on-prem at this point. You could build a Kubernetes cluster or a Kubernetes environment, but it's not easy, and it's not like TAS. It's very difficult to manage, and in the past, it's always been one of those things like, okay, if I have one developer screw something up over here and it's in the same cluster as this other thing, they could potentially take out multiple websites, in one action. So the fact that, now through vSphere 7 and then even TAS for K8, so there's been a lot of developments in those areas where the developers will have easier access, and it won't be like the overhead of Kubernetes. It won't be the risk that comes with traditional Kubernetes. It will actually be something that'll be easier to manage and something easier for the developers to deploy to. That's something that we're definitely looking forward to, because, we all know old legacy, not even old legacy, but more like your traditional relational databases are difficult to manage. You have a lot of things to consider for those. And if you could start moving those out to more of a microservice model, but have them all in one platform, or even if it's separate clusters, you could make that something that's a lot more manageable, and you could make the developers' lives better and actually give your customers a better product faster.
And one thing I would add is it has Kubernetes in its name. And that's really, really a benefit, because if you talk to a lot of people, they say, hey, we need Kubernetes. Do you actually know what you want to achieve? Do you know what you have to do when you use Kubernetes native? No, but I want Kubernetes. And now we can say, okay, you can have Kubernetes and you can have a CF push experience with a Tanzu control plane. That's perfect. You have your Kubernetes, and that's why I'm a big fan of this, and you should call it Tanzu Application Services powered by Kubernetes.
Oh, there you go. But VMware,
that's gotta
dig a little on VMware here. Naming, there's been too many name changes recently, and it's hard to keep up, and it's hard for me to help the directors and executives at Garmin to keep up. So as much as I like that name, I'm going to say no, Juergen.
Yeah, I think we would all agree with you there. There's been way too many name changes, and I think every large company is like every large vendor is pretty bad for that, especially as they go through acquisitions. There's like this rush to like rebrand everything to be, you know, more in line with the current branding, and that certainly for the first year or two causes a lot of pain for like employees, for
Everyone.
customers, for everyone.
Yeah.
Just think of the naming from PKS to TKGI or TKGS or whatever it is called now.
Hi.
And the difference between I and S, it's quite hard to explain.
Right?
Yeah.
I want to... Go ahead.
I just want to piggyback a little bit on what Juergen said, because we've had really similar conversations. There are, it seems to me, a lot of people that they want Kubernetes because they're hearing so much about Kubernetes, and they're like, this is the thing everyone's using, and I got to use it. But I like to use the term foot gun, right? You can, it's really, really powerful, but if you point it in the wrong direction, really bad things happen. So you got to be really careful not to shoot yourself in the foot. And I think, to Juergen's point, being able to give people the power of Kubernetes and yet give them the simplicity of CF push, that's going to be a big, big deal for a lot of people. I'm really excited to bring that to my customers, and I think it's the perfect thing where, you know, you can give them Kubernetes, and then, you know, all of a sudden they realize, oh, so all those policies that you just wrote about all the things I have to do to securely deploy a container, those are hard. I'm like, yeah, they're really hard. That's why I'm trying to tell you, use the CF push because it makes it easy.
Yeah, I completely agree with that too, because you know, it's funny because like all the time the developers, even the developers who use Taz, they keep asking for Kubernetes, but then when you're like, give me your use case, like what do you need it for? Like what is it Taz not doing for you? It's really that they want to be on the cutting edge, and they want to have that Kubernetes experience so that they could probably put it on their resume or the LinkedIn, or just feel like they're up to date. I mean, it's kind of part of being a developer, right? You want to be working on the latest thing. So it's not even something that, you know, they shouldn't be proud to constantly be pushing that envelope, right? Trying to move forward. But when you look at it, and once we have that environment there will be definitely things that are great, like data services, things that can't go on Taz. But I also agree that the developers, when they see the complexity differences, even with the CF push on Kubernetes, they're going to say, like, that YAML file needs to be like 3 times as long for Kubernetes. I bet you the developers are going to be like, I'm just going to push that to Taz if I can.
Yeah. YAML.
Now, Carrie,
maybe...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Maybe one other point to that, since we are an air-gapped shop, we have all these foundations on-prem in our own data center. And when our developers develop applications built based on Cloud Foundry, we do not have that much offerings in the public cloud where we have a public CF push experience. You do not have that many public Cloud Foundry installations, and as Pivotal Web Services shutting down, there's one less for that. And with Task for Kates, it's quite easy to deploy a Cloud Foundry foundation in a public cloud. And that's why I think it also offers or enables us the way to a public cloud deployment more easily, because you don't have to deploy a huge foundation based on 4 VMs. You have to simply get a Kubernetes cluster wherever you can get one and deploy the control plane on. This enables us to move to do this step to a public cloud based on a Cloud Foundry abstraction layer and does not have to go to the Kubernetes abstraction layer to do that. Yeah.
So I was going to mention, like what Kerry was talking about earlier about data services and stuff. That's one of the things I'm pretty excited about. I kind of get a weird, sick, perverse joy out of running things on things that weren't supposed to run those things. And so taking data services, taking large monolithic apps and kind of getting them to function and actually function quite well on Kubernetes is kind of a lot of fun. And it's interesting to see a lot of the actual database vendors and everyone are scrambling to build out their Kubernetes operators, right? And so we're now getting this thing where Kubernetes is not only the place where we're running our containers, but it's also becoming this API for all of these other things. So it's becoming the API for getting databases. It's becoming like with the AWS operator, with the GCP operator, it's the API to get VMs in Google Cloud, and then us being able to then wrap those things with the catalog services, and then sort of make them more easily available to our developer friends as well, and sort of make it a fairly simple part of their CF push to get, a MongoDB database, or a Google Cloud like object store bucket or whatever. I think that's definitely going to allow our developers to be a bit more creative about how they solve problems, and not necessarily be sort of pushed down the super highly opinionated Cloud Foundry way of doing things, which is just going to enable more flexibility. Yes, more complexity for sure, but the flexibility it will give is going to be pretty amazing.
And a lot more of isolation of different teams against each other.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Carrie.
Sorry, I was also going to say, like, for us, especially with having large customers, the fact that now we can now basically have our same platform through VMware out on Azure is going to be a big difference for us, because we are starting to do business globally. Our data center, we have 2 right now in the U.S., but they're both in the U.S. And like already we have work for one of our European offices over in Azure and Germany. So, because obviously the data protection rules. So, and then you also have to think about latency. So that's going to be a big improvement, I think, as well, because that'll make it easy for our developers to be able to deploy where they need to deploy, when they need to deploy.
That sounds really similar to what Juergen was saying about just the ability to get into any cloud seems a lot easier, because you basically can walk in anywhere and go, hey, give me a Kubernetes. And because it's Kubernetes, they're going to go, okay. And then you do what you want to do on top of it.
Yeah.
And if you take Tanzu Mission Control into account, which streamlines this process of creating a Kubernetes cluster in any cloud, and I hope to get Tanzu Mission Control to deploy a Cloud Foundry for K8s on that cluster as well. So to manage my fleet of Cloud Foundry foundations across every cloud. That's what I hope to see.
That would be really cool. That'd be awesome.
You should. Do you have like a little comment box that you can write that down and then slide that over to Brian?
I'm sure we will get there, but I wouldn't hold your breath. It's not coming next week.
But that's something that it's a nice segue into, was there anything that wasn't announced specifically at VMworld, or, anything that you're saying, hey, this is other things, pain points or whatnot that we'd like addressed sooner rather than, later?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in on that one. So I'm probably thinking way above my pay grade here, but I do it because I'm hoping that by influencing at that level, I get to keep doing what I love.
Sure, and we also don't know what you get paid, so you could speak like you're on any grade.
Yeah, these guys actually recruited me from Subway earlier. So,
oh hey, make sure you get all the right sizes of beverages, large,
That's right.
medium, and.
That's right. No, seriously. How everything is going to be priced, I think, is going to be really interesting. So with Cloud Foundry today, especially when you run a Pivotal Cloud Foundry or now TAS on top of VMware, you can kind of feel like you're paying twice for the same product, right? Because you've got to build a VM, so you pay a VMware license, and then you have to build. You're building that into a Cloud Foundry foundation, and then you're paying a license to run Cloud Foundry. So you kind of feel at times like you're paying twice. And I'm concerned with how that's going to look. Some of the licensing that's been available more recently for Cloud Foundry has alleviated some of that, and so I keep yelling to anybody who will listen about that. But I'm kind of afraid between the build service. One thing we haven't talked about yet also is observability. Tanzu observability by Wavefront is really cool. We're really liking the results that we're getting out of that product. And I bring that up real quick because I think it falls into this conversation. I'm a little afraid that I'm going to end up paying for the same app instance more than once. So I might have to buy a VMware license to run my Kubernetes cluster, and then I buy a Cloud Foundry license to run that as a Cloud Foundry application. And then I might have to pay again because I want to observe it using Tanzu observability. and I may want to have my build service hooked up in there to make sure that application is constantly patched as the runtime or the OS or even my code happens to change. And so you see there how there's all these products that are really, really cool looking products, and I'm really excited to see how they're all going to work together. But I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to pay for them. Is sort of one of the concerns I have. So one thing I guess that I didn't hear enough about was how all of that is going to be priced. I know they talked about the different, I think they call them the versions of or the flavors of Tanzu, where you have Tanzu Enterprise and things like that. But that I really need to see that fleshed out a lot more, because it's frankly bringing uncertainty to me right now. So that's one of the things I would really like to have heard a little more about.
And I'll actually add to that, because I feel a lot of that same. I think that's like the elephant in the room, right? I mean, especially right now with the fact that we are looking at vSphere 7 and Kubernetes and actually observability as well. But it's very hard to explain to upper management that all of those components are things that we pay for separately. And so, like, their question always is, well, if we're paying for all this, aren't we getting some sort of bulk discount? Or, there's going to be a lot of questions like that. So if it was more easily packaged for management, and there were easier like discounts to show, like we're packaging X and then the discount is Y, so if there was something like that, rather than like coming in on invoice saying, okay, we've got TAS, and then we've got our VM environment, and we've got the whatever the TKG licensing, and then we have the observability licensing. It gets very overwhelming. As somebody who has to have those financial discussions, I can tell you that it's a very uncomfortable discussion. And so anything that can be done to make that easier is going to increase probably the sellability of the product as well. So I think that is something that's critical.
Yeah, I totally
because back
agree.
in the day, yeah, it was VMware was this pay line. Pivotal was this pay line. Wavefront is this pay line. Jenkins or whatever else. And now that they're all kind of becoming one thing, it's like, oh, right, I got it. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I try and stay out of the how we charge things to people, like conversations, because they tend to get very loud and very passionate amongst the various groups, and so for my own sanity, I avoid those discussions wherever I can. But it does sound like they're like you mentioned the additions of Tanzu, and it does sound like they're putting a lot of thought into that. So hopefully that will fairly soon start to be a lot more concrete and be a lot more transparent what each of the additions includes. But I do think that we will see something along the lines of you'll pay once, and that once that you pay will sort of be small, medium, large, or a few things, a lot of things, all the things. I think everything I've heard makes it sound like it's moving in we got to make this much simpler direction. So I think when it is all finally out, we'll be a lot happier, both from your perspective, but also from ours, being able to actually talk about it and being able to like figure it out like in your head without having to go to some crazy spreadsheet and click around and
yeah. I'm really hoping for the buffet where, like, I remember as a kid there was always like the Sunday brunch, right? And as a kid I didn't know how much it cost, but you'd walk in and you could have an omelet, or you could have a steak, or they always had chicken nuggets because there were 12-year-olds there, and you walk in and kids are $6.95 and adults are $13.95, and whatever's in there that you want to eat, you just go ahead and eat. And now as an adult, I don't go to buffets as much because bad things happen to my waistline if I do that too often. But I still like to use that analogy for things like this, where we have observability and flavors of Tanzu and flavors of Cloud Foundry. And what I would like to be able to do is just go, here's my ticket. I want to come in and eat at your buffet. So, hoping that people are listening that get that.
Every restaurant is all you can eat as long as you've got a thick enough wallet.
And now I'm thinking of VMs as chicken nuggets.
Yep. Yeah. And as a 42-year-old, I would still get those chicken nuggets, by the way. I'm just
Oh, yeah, I'm not against the chicken nuggets. However, occasionally I do eat the other stuff too. Well, actually, all the time I eat the other stuff too.
Yeah, you gotta have
VMs as chicken nuggets. That's kind of interesting. It's like the servers as cattle, not pets.
I guess, yeah, the reason I think of it that way is it's the thing that you can easily get the most of, and chances are you're going to be getting more of individual VMs than multiple of other things.
There you go.
I always like it. I always like it when they do like the football game and they do the like 99 nuggets for $10 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. You know that's quality nugget if you're getting 99 for $10.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Hey,
anything from you, Juergen?
The nuggets are going to be great.
Yeah. Anything you wish you didn't hear but you're looking for down the pipeline?
Well, pricing is also a topic, a deal for us. I think this will converge in the future, and there will be a model that is at least reasonable and explainable. And my challenge is always explaining these pricing models to our developers, which we charge to use our platform, since we have to do an internal cost calculation as well. And I have to tell the developer, if you run your application, the instance will cost you X, Y, that. And therefore, I need a model that is explainable. What I was sensing and kind of missing, and maybe it's just more a feeling, is this relation between Pivotal, VMware, and the open source community on the other side. You have, Pivotal was a strong open source company, and you felt that open source spirit in every case, in every discussion, every talk. And I hear that commitment to open source in all the keynotes, but I didn't have the feeling to really believe in it. I do not have that strong belief in VMware is going to open source. Also, I wish it will happen, and I'm pretty sure it will happen. But I had a stronger feeling and believing in Pivotal doing open source than VMware doing open source, maybe because of the history of VMware. And that's what I want to see, constant investment in the future. What I would like to see is this constant commitment to open source, because I think open source is the key to such a big product or platform like Cloud Foundry is, because you have that huge community and you have that power in that community. It's like the Vanguard community. If I ever have a question, or if I'm unsure about my way, I want to ask the Vanguards, and they will tell me, hey, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it right. Hey, it's a good idea. Let's do it that way or that way. And this community is the real power. And I want to see this commitment a bit more expressed a bit more often. I think maybe it's just my personal opinion, my personal feeling, but that's what I want to shout out at in the moment.
Yeah. Sure, yeah. So I know VMware has been a lot better at open source stuff lately. Certainly, we saw them bring out Harbor, open source that, and donate it to the CNCF. We've got Valero. We've got a ton of stuff that we brought in through Heptio that has stuck around and is continuing to be developed on. Contour as well. We also have Antrea, which is the open source network for Kubernetes that we're building out, that has a lot of similarities to NSXT and has a lot of the interesting built-in network tracing and stuff like that. So there's definitely an effort happening, and I'm definitely involved in a lot of internal conversations around things that I wouldn't have thought would be previously talked about open sourcing as being open sourced. So I think we're going to continue to see more and more things get open sourced as people sort of start to really understand that, when you open source something, you're not, giving up on revenue. You're actually, in a lot of ways improving that, top end of the funnel of where you can get revenue from. And it's just hard for some people who haven't lived that open source world to understand that until they're sort of dragged through it.
Yeah. Again, we're still kind of in the new growing pains, right? Like all of it's still have that new car smell.
Yeah.
I'll experience that soon when I get a new car. I had my old one today. Watched it.
It's just glue.
Away.
Tiffany, it's overrated. It's way
Yeah, it is.
overrated. I want to kind of I feel exactly the same way Juergen does about open source software. I wanted to bring up an idea. One of your competitors, maybe more, I don't know, but some competitors go with the model that all the software is open source, and where they make their revenue is on the support that they provide to run that software. And obviously, that's a really different model than VMware or Pivotal had. But I'm wondering, is that so, Paul? When you say dragged through the open source funnel, it makes it sound like you kind of have some ideas there. What do you think about that versus, the Pivotal or the? Forgive me for keeping on saying Pivotal. I was a Pivotal customer for a long time. The Pivotal VMware model is pay for software, pay for support, and there is the idea of another model that is pay for support and eat the software for free. Have you guys, is that something VMware would consider?
Yeah, I mean, I think coming from the Pivotal world, we certainly were more in that world. Most of what went into TAS was, the open source Cloud Foundry bits that we sprinkled in a ton of operability, some extra like dashboarding and visibility and stuff like that. And so I think we sort of we bring that. And I think Heptio also brought that same thing, like the Heptio Kubernetes distribution that wasn't a distribution was all open source, and all of their pieces were open source. So I think we've definitely got a good grounding on that from those kind of the groups that are producing a lot of the Tanzu content. And I think we will see more and more stuff get open source. I don't think we're going to see vSphere get open source anytime soon. But, when you look at, a lot of the Tanzu stuff is based on open source with then some proprietary, good stuff on top. Like, for instance, like TMC probably won't be open sourced. Wavefront probably won't be open source, but they're probably going to be, they'll probably have clear APIs. They'll probably have, good interoperability with open source products. And certainly one of the things I always try and do is when I'm showing off our products, I always try and make sure I have open source equivalents or alternatives. Because to me, there's nothing worse than as an advocate going somewhere and demonstrating something or showing something, and then people not being able to do what I just did without, signing NDAs or writing checks or anything like that. And so, I mean, from a personal perspective, I am all in on open sourcing as much as possible and focusing on the support and the operability. But that's just not the world that VMware has been. So it's going to be a long road to go that way. But all signs point to we are heading in the right direction. And there's a bunch of internal conversations I wish I could talk about that would add more to what I'm saying. But unfortunately, we can't talk about everything that's going on. But yeah, I think we'll all be pleasantly happy, as we progress, as we release more stuff. And as, what Tanzu is really solidifies into a really good product, I think we'll also see a lot of that trickle into various open source ecosystems.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That'll be really good.
All right. Well, this is great, and I feel like this is an open conversation that we can continue, and that's why we will. Hopefully, we'll make this a monthly regular happening, which would be great. Before I get you all out of here, one last question: what's the least worst, Kubernetes YAML or Bosch manifests? Just.
Oh God.
Oh, man.
That was just a throw out there to break it up.
At least you have a tool for. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
At least you have a tool which is fissile for converting one into the other one.
There you go. Well, I know we're again so happy to have had this episode happen. Jonathan, Juergen, Carrie, thank you so much for your time. we definitely look forward to having, you know, a Vanguard show, and you and others, you know, again, kind of just talking about all the things, good, bad, and the ugly of, you know, working with the Tanzu and other, you know, products with VMware. So this was great. Anything you all need to add before we say goodbye?
No, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. This was very enjoyable.
Good.
Thanks for having us.
And a reminder, just next week again, Tanzu Tuesday, we have Simone and I'm forgetting his other name, but Stefan, that's right. And we're going to be talking about Kubernetes and Spring. So make sure you show up for that one. We have been very happy to have you all watching again, and thank you. I've got nothing else. Paul, take us out.
Bye.